You cannot murder Americans and not have to live the rest of your life looking over your back, because bearded men are going to come say hello to you at one point, and sooner than later should be the time frame on that.
The opinions of the guests and host are their own and do not represent the opinions of Ironclad, the Border Patrol, or the Department of Homeland Security.
Welcome to Borderland Narcosis, an Ironclad original, presented by First Form. If you guys haven't got your First Form products yet, go check it out at firstform.com/Borderland. That's where I got this right here, my energy drink. Our next guest is Brent Tucker, who is a career military member from Special Forces to Delta Force. He has a wealth of knowledge, and we talk about the cartels, their capabilities, and the potential threat if America has to go kinetic with the Mexican cartels. You guys go and check it out. Well, Brent, thank you for joining us today on Borderland Narcosis, an Ironclad original. Obviously, you've probably seen some of the clips I've sent you personally. You've probably seen some of the stuff that's gone on through some viral social media, YouTubers who've been posting some of the clips. And what I wanted to do was bring on who I consider an expert in the space of tactics and, military. And so if you wouldn't mind, for our audience, would you give a quick little bio of your background?
Yeah, I put 20 years in the Army, joined after September 11th, served from 01 to 21, spent half of my career as a Green Beret and the last half of my career in the Delta Force.
I love that. My production team, they put the Special Missions Unit, and I was like, do I have to say that? I was hoping I get to say Delta. So I think,
some people prefer that from my former job, and hey, that's and I get it, but you're just saying the same thing without saying it. So I don't really understand the need for it.
Yeah, well, I think for a viewership standpoint, I think more viewers have heard the term Delta and now can correlate like, oh, aren't those the badasses that we've heard about? When you say special missions, I think I get the tactical side of OPSEC and everything else, but I think for the average endgame user, using the word Delta, they really understand the gravity of, I guess, the level of soldier that you were able to get to and work as.
Yeah, I agree. And to say that, and yes, I got there, but I slid in, and amazing men that were better than me just let me hang out with them for 10 years. And it was amazing. I was grateful for every day they let me do it.
That's pretty much the majority of my career. It's just somehow sliding me in and just trying to be a great man in everything I do. Well, man, let's just get to it. You've seen what's happening recently with the Trump administration designating the cartel as a terrorist organization. You saw the buzz on social media. Everyone's getting excited and all the just chaos. And for me, as someone who's kind of been in this space of the cartel and the border conversation, I start to think about back in the day when Special Forces was training GAFE and teaching them military tactics, and then later having to face the challenges of dealing with some of those individuals who parted off and became part of Los Zetas, another cartel who started creating chaos. And then now we fast forward to what we see today. You, as someone who spent some time in Special Forces and Delta, I'd love to hear just right off the bat what you thought of when you saw that the United States of America is designating the cartel as a terrorist organization.
One, as you mentioned, it created a huge buzz, as it should, because I'm not saying it doesn't open up, opportunities, and it doesn't open up the ability for something much bigger to happen. That's always a possibility. But the truth is, we're going to do what we've always done. What really has opened up for us is a better opportunity to assist them and to basically more or less help them behind the scenes on this. I wouldn't expect little birds and Blackhawks to be flying into Mexico on high value targets anytime soon. But at the end of the, this is where it starts, you know. So I understand the buzz around this. I'm not saying, you know, something 2, 3, 4 years, you know, down the road, it doesn't turn into something, but the likelihood of something like that happening is so small. I think people really underestimate how risk adverse our military is and how risk adverse our politicians are. As much as the boys would love to do that, I believe I don't really see it coming to fruition.
Recently, whistleblowers have been called before Congress to answer a question that could literally change human history. Is the U.S. military in possession of actual alien technology? On the new 4-part Change Agents Special Series Black Project, an Ironclad original, we examine the history of military research into anti-gravity, strange special access projects, and the work being done by private contractors like Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works to try to understand if UFOs are real, or if the military is hiding a breakthrough that could potentially alter our world. Stay tuned until the end for an exclusive first episode preview. Become an Ironclad YouTube member to binge all 4 episodes of Change Agents Black Project on launch day. Otherwise, catch new episodes weekly. Join now, YouTube at This Is Ironclad.
When you say risk adverse, can you help explain that, and maybe something from your own experience being overseas as many times as you have, that would kind of show our listeners what you mean by that?
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to drop names and give you exact instances of people like Lloyd Austin, who didn't allow us to go on a hostage rescue mission in Syria because, you know, there was a hostage under ISIS control, and at the end of the day, we could have gone and we could have saved her, but he made the ridiculous statement that she's not under any real current threat of her life, so we're going to continue to play this out, which is ridiculous because at that point, the besides her at the moment, who ended up dying, they had beheaded or killed every American hostage within ISIS control. So of course, every day that she's under ISIS control, her life is at risk. And so it's my personal opinion that it's easier for them to say no to an operation and have nothing bad happen on their watch than risk something happened and going to save a fellow American. But that type of risk aversion did keep us from going and doing things. And Lloyd Austin did the same thing on the Virginia Beach side as well for a doctor in Yemen, I believe.
I don't want to put me into the same group of guys as you. I feel like there's a different caliber of man. But guys who serve in the special operations usually serve willing to die for a greater cause. And so as much as maybe someone higher up would say, well, we've put a lot of money into these individuals and their training, a big part of us would be, yeah, but we're willing to go try and make the attempt over anything rather than sitting back. And so when the government is risk adverse in using these, you know, these assets such as us, you know, Delta Rangers, whatnot, I guess that could be, I mean, that's extremely frustrating to lose an innocent life in this when we had a chance to use the best of the best to try and save that, you know, that human life, that American life. So on the conversation of being risk adverse, do you think that it's just not time for us to go in kinetic and take out the cartel, or is there some kind of escalation of force before we get there? Is there a couple moves before that we need to kind of accomplish?
As I've gotten older, that answer, you know, definitely changes. I do think we should exhaust all options to allow Mexico to take care of Mexico's problem, and by going in there and kind of, I don't use the word scrutinizing, assessing the situation and saying, hey, what is it that you guys need? What is it that we can make available to you? to allow you to police your own country. I think I have no problem with, especially when it comes to Mexico, because it's because of the vicinity of it. It's so much closer to us. Their problems do become our problems. So I really have no problem with that. Um, and from there, the risk assessment, seeing what their capabilities are, seeing where we can plug in that gap is definitely something we should do. Now, that being said, I don't know if you remember the story of, it happened several years ago, but the Mormon family that lived on the
Yes.
Mexican side of the border, and that Suburban basically got shot up thinking that it was a government vehicle, and it wasn't. I would reserve the right for episodes like that to to be an exception to that rule, and absolutely send a message that you will not mess with Americans. I don't even like that. You cannot murder Americans and not have to live the rest of your life looking over your back, because bearded men are going to come say hello to you at one point, and sooner than later should be the time frame on that.
Yeah, we've had the family member on the show telling us about that story. It was heartbreaking, extremely sad, and I do agree.
Yeah,
I
women
do.
and kids.
Yeah.
It was a horrible story, and those particular stories are, I believe, are a little bit separate. And by tagging them as a terrorist organization does open that up to us. But if we're being honest, I think that it would come in the form of a drone strike would be much more um, realistic. Again, going back to how risk adverse our government is, it's just a lot easier, cleaner, and less risky to send a missile their way than put boots on the ground. And to some degree, they may be right.
I have other questions on what we were talking about, but I want to jump to the drone question real quick. When we start using drones, all right, there was just recently dropped that Trump is not against using drones, and there's a potential for, and it's actually not official like news right now. It's just what the word is being spread throughout social media. This unorthodox way of passing information all of a sudden. But the drone conversation is happening right now, and is there any concern for you, just on experience, right, that drones can go both ways, right? We don't have a defense for those that is appropriate for the potential for how many drones can be of abundance in a short period of time. And I'm just curious what your thoughts on the whole drone warfare and the potential of a counter drone attack.
Yeah, if Ukraine has taught us one thing, that that drones are an absolute part of war. That technology is advanced, and it's here to stay, and it is um, a viable use in warfare, and something we need to be prepared for. And it's safe to say that we have our ear to the ground on what's going on over there, and it's giving us kind of a heads up of what drones are capable of, how they're being used, and more importantly, like you said, how to prepare against them. So we are that was, I'm not glorifying the Ukrainian Russian war by any means, but hey, it's happening, and it is something that we absolutely can and should learn from. So that is giving us a leg up, without a doubt, in what's going on over here. What I'll say to that, though, our type of drone usage is really first world, as you know, like type of drone usage, long legs, missiles that can come off the rails from a moving platform, hitting a moving platform, and putting it right in the seat of the vehicle that we choose to put it in. The cartels, to grab that type of technology, really is right off the table. The type of drone swarm warfare that you're talking about, they're not there on that. And the other problem with that is those type of drones only have so far of their legs are only so long. So to launch something like that, they have to get a lot closer. which goes back to border security. Everything ties into border security. It truly does. I don't know. I truly don't understand why border security isn't a bipartisan subject. Both sides of the aisle should care absolutely what's coming over the border, because now that gets into that topic, because those legs are only so long. Well, they're going to have to cross the border. Well, then we better protect our border.
What's going on, y'all? I'm not sure if you know this, but Borderland Narcosis is sponsored by First Form. First Form is a wellness supplement company. And, I've been with them for about 7 years. And I've been with them for that long because I truly believe in not just the product, but the people who own the company. They are a culture that just believes in your health. And so if you guys haven't tried it before, I would recommend you go and check out the Formula One Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Add a little bit of a ignition to that, and you'll have exactly what you need for your post-workout drink. This is something I've used for a very long time. When I'm in the best shape of my life, it's always been because I have a nice regimen of the First Form products. So if you guys are interested, go check them out at firstform.com/borderland. Okay, use our link. It is the #1 stphorm.com/borderland. And if you order over $75, you get free shipping. And if you're new to the site, you get a free app for 30 days. So go check it out. Again, thank you so much for all the support. See you soon. Yeah, it's tough because border security, like you said, should be more of a, we should all agree to that. But what gets funneled through border security conversation is always immigration. And that's an emotional subject. That's why. And it's the craziest thing that's why this subject is so complex, because when you say border security, then all of a sudden you're potentially stepping on the freedoms of people when it comes to immigration, and it just becomes extremely complicated. But what we have today with drones, with cartels, with drugs, the only answer right now is stronger border security, plain and simple.
Right.
You've seen some of the videos I've sent you. You've probably seen throughout social media as well. We know that because I wrote an article about this, we know that Los Zetas have a foundation of training that the special forces have taught them. And I can only imagine that they've only grown and improved since. We see cartel just such as the CJ&G have a very tactical branch. Does any of that concern you as someone who's been in a high level of military tactics? Does concern you that if we do have to go kinetic, that there's a reasonable fight that could happen?
Yes and no. And I know that, and it's really on two levels. The videos that we watched and me and you even had a conversation on, about them having high level people that was, if you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but one being a Green Beret, one being a Ranger, and one being an ex-unit guy, like that are part of their training and tactics. And the first thing that we talked about were, well, if you know what group they're from and you know what Ranger battalion they're like, if you know that much about them, then I want names. Like who are these guys? Because I don't know of anyone like that. So I'm not sure, at least in this particular instance, that they have that type of personnel managing them. I don't believe there's an ex-unit guy over there, that switched sides and is actively working with and for the cartel. I could be wrong, but again, if we know he's an ex-unit guy, we know that because someone found out about him and his background. Then give me a name. I'll let you know. So until then, I don't believe they do. So that's kind of the part where I'm like, no, I don't believe that they have ex-military guys that are in there actively training them, lifelong military guys with a ton of experience that are doing the day-to-day operations on their training. The flip side of that, which is, yes, we've had 7th Special Forces Group training in South America for almost generations now. But they basically just teach them basic 7-8 skills. And especially these days, in anything that you could, those manuals, they can get online. There's training videos online. They don't need Green Berets to go down there to teach other people for them to steal those tactics and bring them over. That's it's it's common knowledge at this point. And at the end of the day, you have to have the people, as you well know. It's one thing to have the knowledge. It's a whole nother thing to have the actual people that are that train for this day in, day out, and are capable of utilizing those tactics. Do they have those guys? I don't know, but I know this. They're not the American military. And I don't think, could they be a formidable force? Maybe. Are they better than the American military? No.
Yeah. Those who are listening, if you heard Brent mention the 7-8, that is the field manual for basic infantry tactics. Simple things as patrolling, setting up. I don't even know if setting up an ambush, that's in the Ranger handbook, but maybe 7-8 has it. I can't even remember. It's been so long. But either way, basic military tactics, it is an open source you can find online. So that's what he was referencing. Yeah.
But I'll say this.
Go ahead.
Regardless of tactics, the truth is they have home field advantage. And if there's one thing we've learned as a military, and I'll go ahead and dispel this. People say, "Oh, you're the greatest military in the world." Afghanistan kicked your ass. That's absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. We haven't lost a battle in Afghanistan or Iraq. We've done nothing but stack bodies everywhere we've been. Nation building is very difficult, and the only person that could have lost the Afghan war, because we won every battle we were ever in, were the Afghan people. They didn't want it, and we can't make them want it more than we do. So for them to even try to reach for that and say, well, you're not the greatest military power, you've been handed losses in Afghanistan and Iraq. By the way, Iraq is obviously a pretty founded, pretty well established state at this point. Iraq's doing pretty good. Yes, it took a long time, but Iraq is its own state. The only reason why Afghanistan isn't a free country right now is because the Afghan people, like I said, just didn't want it as much as we do. And I think you can ask ISIS if, how powerful the American military is. But you have a hard time finding some of them to ask them questions, and we're the reason why.
I appreciate that. You said something earlier, and I didn't get to address my thought on it, but it also, the same thought goes with when you're saying that that you believe there isn't someone from the unit that's teaching. I've seen a lot of crazy things when it comes to the Mexican side of the conversation, because the financial backing, the drug backing, has made everyone corrupt in a sense. And I can't say everyone. That's kind of I shouldn't say everyone, but it is hard to say when you said, let's just kind of help them. I'm always nervous. Like, yeah, I'd love to see Mexico take charge and control the narrative and start to, take down the cartel themselves. But they're so inundated with corruption. So many law enforcement are still corrupted. I've seen it personally as an agent on the ground. Some of the border agencies that we've worked with, corruption, politicians, corruption. There's question that the current president of Mexico right now is corrupt. So when you say that, do you think that's a possibility that we could actually assist them without seeing the corruption that they have currently and that they've had for many years?
Yeah, I've done work, plenty of work down in South America. So Mexico not being one of them, and so I haven't. I can't speak firsthand knowledge of that, but your hesitation of working with them for those reasons, like you said, are well documented, and that is a valid concern. That is, and there's really no way of ensuring that everybody we work with, has been properly assessed. So it's like anything else. There's always risk when it comes to reward, and the bigger the reward, usually the greater risk. And you just have to do your due diligence and do the best that you can to weed that out. But I'm not sure you ever completely weed that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on that same conversation, man, you've seen your brothers, your friends, my friends all go do contract work because it pays well. Do you think there's not a possibility where they offer a unit guy like, hey, here's $10 million, big dog, come train her, and they don't say yes? And then the funny thing is, I know, man, the Ranger Battalion is such patriotic dudes, and they love it. But you still see guys that, would do anything for money. There's, that's just the nature of the beast. And I would think just what do you think on that?
Yeah, no, the chances are never zero. Let's say we have to be honest with that. It's never zero. But and of course it depends on how you want to rack and stack, these people. But I do think, a little bit what you alluded to. I'll take it a step further. They're really patriotic guys, so that's why it's almost zero. And the higher up the list you go, I do believe those type of people are even more patriotic. They're selected for their integrity, which reduces it to near zero. But so I find it very, very highly unlikely that a unit guy would ever do that. And even though the SF and Ranger selection processes aren't as stringent, they are stringent enough, and I still find it highly unlikely. But if it were to come from, it would, the chances of it coming from those units are slightly higher. And no one better soundbite that and be like, oh, Brent just said that if it's going to come from, it's going to come from the Rangers and the Green Berets. Not what I'm saying. I said it would be a slightly higher possibility, but I still think it's almost zero.
Yeah, I think more likely the Navy SEALs. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, if you think of their vicinity to the SoCal region, I mean, it's just a geographical thing. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree with you. Like, I guess my heart is always so infatuated with the brothers in the special operations communities, the tier 1, 2, 2 elements, and the willingness to engage with the enemy and die for this country. That is a level of patriotism that is really hard to see someone turn their whole, the honor of that into something else because of money. We didn't do it for money. No one made really good money doing it. And so it is hard to believe. When I heard that, I was like, dang, I've heard the rumors of it. I'm not sure if that's true. Still, there's nothing been verified. It's just all, it's all talk at the moment. But
and let's walk that down just logically, a little bit more, while we're talking about it. As we're talking about just the chances of it being a possibility, so the chances of it being a career guy that would do that is even lower, right? So if you're willing to give up 20 years of your life for your country, so who are we talking about more than likely? If it were to be someone, it's more than likely one of those type of one contract done, disgruntled and got out. And the reality is, as everyone in special operations knows, by the time you're done with your first contract or you're in any team for 3 or 4 years, I know a lot of people are going to look at that and be like, oh, he was a Green Beret for 4 years. He was a Ranger for 3 years. You barely just know your job at that point. Like, it's really that not, again, I know it's more, subjective to how we look at things and how civilians look at things. Like, they're going to look at that person and be like, oh, he has a lot of experience because he did that. He did it for years. But as we look at it, we'll be like, what, he barely knows his job. Like, and that's true.
Yeah.
So that's the type of person that more than likely it would be. And he would probably be overselling his capabilities, which really would eventually be almost what you want, because he would end up overselling himself and putting out tactics and putting out things that he says works when he barely knows what works.
Man, that is fascinating and a great thought that I have never put together. Yeah, if you have someone who just did one contract, the farthest they probably have gone in Ranger Battalion would be probably E5. 4 deployments would be most, right, in the time frame that you'd have. And hey, that's a pretty experienced guy, but that's not the E6, E7 first sergeant
Right.
who's been many deployments, many levels of training.
You just said, he's E5 and Ranger Battalion on the first contract, which I was going to say, which is great because that means that guy's knows his job up to a squad level, and good luck running a whole cartel army with a squad level of knowledge. It's just again, it's things that when people, I don't want to say fearmonger, but I'll use that term. Sure. It's when people fearmonger without having enough knowledge about, the inner workings of the military. If you just hear the term, hey, they have a, they have a ranger working for them, and we'll just leave it at ranger for a second, just to not go down a bunch of different rabbit holes. When you really dig into that, like we just did, it's actually not as, it actually is just that, really fear mongering. It just doesn't make logical sense.
Yeah, and I think the cartel's really good about using social media to create fear and terrorism, just by way of just some of the videos. I mean, you've seen some of the videos of how the cartel and ISIS were almost competing in making horrific videos. The cartel is cutting people's heads off. They're doing it with a high production. They're showing this level of it, and then you see a few months later, boom, ISIS is almost creating the same exact style video, and I think that creates this stigma in their head as well, which I believe starts to have people scared. I mean, it makes the cartel look pretty serious.
Right, and never to underestimate, our enemy. I'm not certain that the cartel even needs that. I mean, they've been playing a violent game for a long time, and they're pretty good at what they do with the resources that they do have. And I'm just not sure an organization like that would accept an outsider or promote an outsider, like that to a high level. It'd be a very risky venture on their part. And like I said, I don't think the cartel views themselves as someone who's in need of help, because they've been doing a pretty good job all by themselves for a long time.
You've trained around the world. You've seen other military forces, other special operations units. Are there other countries that you think have a locked on organization that could potentially, I guess my thought is, if they're not buying people from US, maybe they're buying people from other countries. And I've heard some of the drone operators from Ukraine are helping down in the CJ&G's team. I've heard several things. And so in your experience, is there other countries out there that have some pretty locked on teams that you think would be more risk to take a bribe?
I don't think so. When we start looking at other countries, I mean, the British 22 SAS, great guys, absolute great guys. You'd walk down the same, logical sequence of them possibly doing it. And I go back to zero, near zero. The CGTF2, for Canada, like, those guys are great, but I just don't see it happening. And of the type of countries that I believe they would take, let's a South American Latin-based country that's culturally aligned with them, or something that in their history, or may have worked with them maliciously, in the past, as they did their real, tier 1 job for their country. Those guys, I know it's going to sound disrespectful, but they're just not that good.
I don't mean to laugh.
I probably could have said a better way, but they're not.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Are they good enough? I mean, are they good enough to do the job that their country asked them to do? Yeah, they are. But when you start comparing them, to to the best units of in the world, they're just not going to get there.
Is the U.S. Special Operations some of the best units in the world?
Not some of the best. They're the best, hands down, hands down. And I've seen them all, and I've worked with them all. Again, the closest, and I would also say the closest to me would be the 2 SAS, and the only reason why they're not on our same level, I really don't even think it would go to an operator standpoint, although I would argue that. But if someone else would like to argue, counter argue that, I'd accept it. I mean, it's not like I'd laugh them out of the room over it. I mean, it's a great counter argument. They'll fall short logistically, and the logistical power of the United States is unmatched. It's unbelievable what all these special operation units can be, as great as they want to be on the ground, but if you can't get them to the fight, then then it doesn't matter.
Interesting. So I just a couple more questions left. There's a ton here, but I just want to stay on this target because I really enjoy the wargaming idea of this. Let's just say it's full on. We're going at it with the cartel and it's kinetic. What are some thoughts on some potential? I guess it would be like, what are your thoughts on the kind of the cities, the urban environment, and the fear of potentially, innocent bystanders being injured in the event of that, and as well as how are you effective in that? Are we using strikers or just kind of in your head from your experience? What are some things that you think about if we are kinetic with them and how that looks?
The GWAT has really given us a lot of experience. Like it really has, and there's a lot of things that carry over. I mean, I fought in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, all three of those countries, multiple trips. And it's always, it's the irony is this: they're all different. They're all different to some extent, and they're all the same, to some extent. And outside of combat operations, just operations around the world, what you really find out is at the end of the day, a lot of things are very similar. Of course, you will have to show up there and take the whatever's new and learn from it in every place you go. But when it comes to low vis assaults or dealing with people with the early warning network, I mean, these are similarities that'll happen in a Mexican cartel type environment. We are used to dealing with people with early warning security. I would almost say, again, I don't want to paint it like it's easy day. I'm not saying that. But to say that we wouldn't be successful is also an absolute ridiculous comment. We've dealt with those and we've done it in harder environments in this aspect, hard environments where we've pulled off amazing missions in think of the right word, in non-permissive environments. We've done how hard it is to do to get away with a low vis assault in a non-permissive environment with early warning. Mexico, I'm not saying the cartel environment may border on non-permissive, the deeper in their territory you go, but now we're getting to work in an environment where there's plenty of permissive environments, semi-permissive environments, all the way up to non-permissive, and we've operated in the hardest environments. So that it actually in that aspect gets a little easier. Does it make sense? What I was, what I'm trying to correlate to. So we could easily get a team of guys that at least on a surface level, could operate in and around that environment, which we cannot do overseas in a Middle Eastern country. It is so much harder to do that there.
So the environment would almost be easier in the event that we have to take the fight that way.
There are aspects, just to kind of drill that down. There are aspects of that environment that are actually easier. Does it mean, does it mean every aspect of that assault is going to be a walk in the park? I mean, absolutely not. We absolutely respect our enemy. But if they think that a tier one element can't get in there, blow a door off their house and be in their house within a second's notice, then they are also drastically underestimating their enemy as well.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting about the difference in Mexico and one of those Middle Eastern countries, the Middle Eastern countries are kind of driven by an ideology, right? Almost like a faith-based ideology that really gives them their shield of willingness to die for it. And not so much in Mexico, right? Mexico, it's not a faith-based organization as much as it is a chase for a lot of money and power, which means in my head, how easy would it be to almost disrupt them by psychologically knowing we're coming and being almost a threat in that level? Like, I just think people are not willing to die all the time for things they don't fully believe in.
I don't think they've ever had to operate against an enemy that can move in the shadows of the night as well as they can during the day, and shoot people on the move. That they just haven't gone up against that level of resistance yet, and because they haven't, I would now let's flip that. Have we gone up against the level of their resistance? I would say we have.
Yeah,
I would say we have. We've gone up against guys with machine guns, with AK-47s. They're slightly better dressed than the guys in the Middle East, but I mean, really, they're very similar as well. And I really like what you had to say about their motivation and what drives them. When you're talking about religious radicals that will 100% willingly die for their cause against someone who's driven by money or fear, I think you'll get different results in that type of fighter as well, and not in a good way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's easier to quit something that is like, my heart's not in this. I just wanted the money for my kids, It's crazy.
And, and when you take our intelligence piece of it, the problem when being motivated by fear and money is we have the ability to take you out of that environment and take you away from the fear, and we have the ability to pay you, and so we can counter that. You cannot counter religious extremism with safety and money. It doesn't sway them.
Yeah, man, it's fascinating. All right, last question, man. You can answer it if you want or not. If I had to list the special operations units that of who is the best to just, what does that list to you? What does that look like? And this is specifically for, my YouTube following that is into the special operations world as well. We have a big following that really pays attention to that.
Whoa, I will upset some people with these answers. So I'll go with a top three, because really when after that, it's really hard to rank them after the top three. So the top three to me is very easy. The Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and the 2-2 SAS. There's in order. There's your top three tier one organizations in the world. And even though I say in order, the difference between those three are razor thin.
Awesome. Well, brother, I appreciate you. Where can some of the audience go and find you and listen to some of your stuff?
Yeah, I'm a co-host of the Anti-Hero podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, in any and every platform that you can find podcasts. And I'm also the owner of FRCC, First Responder Coffee Company, and First Responder Cigar Company. You can find us at frccoffee.com. Get you some good cigars, good coffee. Portions of every sale go to benefit and support law enforcement.
Thank you for listening to Borderland Narcosis, an Ironclad original presented by First Form. Go check out firstform.com/Borderland for your products today. And until next time, we'll see you later.
On the debut episode of Black Project, a Change Agents special series, we examine the strange, true story of the military's efforts to build anti-gravitic craft. From a Nazi weapon expert's fake death and cryptic comments by aerospace executives, to the mysterious disappearance of a scientist on the edge of a breakthrough, we look at the programs being worked on in secret and the question of whether they are from another planet, or are they the results of black projects you were never supposed to know about. Become an Ironclad YouTube member to binge all 4 episodes of Change Agents Black Project on launch day. Otherwise, catch new episodes weekly. Join now, YouTube at This Is Ironclad.